August 20th, 2008, a routine summer afternoon at Madrid Barajas Airport. Passengers of Spanair Flight 5022 boarded their plane, thinking of their destination, the sun-soaked Canary Islands, a coveted escape from the sweltering heat of Madrid, unaware of the tragedy about to unfold. Minutes into takeoff, a series of overlooked warning signs and critical mistakes lead to a catastrophic chain reaction. The plane crashes, resulting in a fiery wreckage and a devastating loss of life. In the midst of the chaos, some miraculously survive, bearing witness to the harrowing final moments. As investigators dig into the wreckage, they uncover shocking revelations about mechanical failures and protocol breaches. Join us as we unravel the hidden dangers, the human toll, and the fatal decisions that culminated in one of Spain's most tragic aviation disasters. This is the story of Spanair Flight 5022, an unfolding nightmare, a tale of survival, and a quest for answers. As we delve into this heart-wrenching story, remember that small decisions can have profound consequences. Subscribe to my channel for more compelling narratives that explore the complexities of human experience and the lessons we can learn from them. On a scorching afternoon on August 20th, 2008, 166 eager passengers and 6 crew members boarded Spanair Flight 5022 at Madrid Barajas Airport. Among them were holidaymakers of various nationalities: Spanish, German, French, Turkish, Italian, and more, all dreaming of a serene getaway. But instead of a 3-hour flight to paradise, their journey turned into a horrific nightmare just moments after takeoff. What went so disastrously wrong on this ill-fated flight? Captain Antonio Garcia Luna, age 39, was a seasoned pilot with more than 8,000 hours in the air. His career began in the Spanish Air Force, where he trained and tested pilots. In 1999, he joined Spanair as a first officer and rose to become a captain on the MD-80 by 2006. His performance in simulator tests and on-the-job training showed he was an above-average pilot. Feedback from his early training days highlighted areas where he needed to improve his crew resource management, particularly in coordinating with his co-pilot. His background as a flight instructor and his rigorous approach to aviation underscored his commitment to safety and operational excellence. The first officer aboard was Francisco Javier Muley, age 31. By the time of the accident, he had amassed just over 1,200 flight hours, predominantly on the MD-80 aircraft. They often remarked on his seriousness towards his duties, noting his disciplined approach and his eagerness to collaborate effectively with the captain and crew. The aircraft involved in this tragic incident was a 15-year-old McDonnell Douglas MD-82, a model once widely favored by airlines across the United States and Europe during the 1990s and early 2000s. Despite its age, the MD-82 was renowned for its safety record, considered one of the most reliable passenger planes in service. What makes this accident particularly heartbreaking is how narrowly it was avoided. Shortly before 1:30 p.m., the pilots radioed the tower controller, indicating they were ready for takeoff on runway 3. 6 left. After receiving clearance, they initiated their departure, but quickly reported a minor issue and requested to vacate the runway. The controller promptly granted permission, and the pilots contacted the Maintenance Control Center in Palma for assistance. The issue they discovered was that the RAM air temperature probe was displaying an unusually high temperature reading. This probe checks how warm the air is near the airplane. When anything moves through the air, like a plane or a car, it pushes the air in front of it, which makes it hotter. This happens a lot more when planes go really fast, especially at high speeds like when they're cruising. For instance, when flying at cruise speed, it typically makes the air around the plane about 30 degrees Celsius warmer than it actually is. Such an issue with RAM air temperature probes is not uncommon in aviation. These probes are critical because they help determine important factors like engine performance and anti-icing measures. Since they are exposed to the airflow during flight, they can sometimes malfunction or give incorrect readings due to various reasons, such as electrical faults, sensor degradation, or environmental factors like ice buildup. Pilots and maintenance crews are trained to troubleshoot and address these issues promptly to ensure safe operations. While not frequent, these occurrences underline the importance of rigorous maintenance and thorough pre-flight checks in aviation safety protocols. The auto throttles rely on this temperature too. Auto throttles are like the cruise control for planes, especially handy during takeoff. If the sensor shows a high temperature, it means the plane's hauling through the air pretty fast. And that's cool, right? Well, not quite. High ram air temperature signals the engines are working hard, which can actually wear them out quicker if they're not dialed back a bit. Imagine needing to slow down your car to protect the engine. It's kind of like that, but way up in the sky. During takeoff, you definitely want those engines working smoothly, not revving too hard. So when the Spanair pilots noticed their sensor acting up, they faced a tough call. They couldn't rely on auto throttles, which are crucial for a smooth takeoff. Unsure about the safety without accurate throttle control, they made the call to head back to the gate for a closer inspection. Interestingly, the ram air temperature probe includes a heating element to prevent it from freezing when it measures the air temperature outside the aircraft. However, if this heating element is inadvertently activated while the plane is on the ground, it can lead to inaccurate temperature readings, showing a higher temperature than actually exists. During taxiing, the captain, suspecting an electrical anomaly affecting the probe, contacted the maintenance control center in Palma using his mobile phone. Following their recommendation, the crew reset the Z29 circuit breaker, which supplies power to the ram air heating element. Despite this action, the probe's temperature readings remained unchanged, indicating the persistence of the underlying issue. The pilots returned the aircraft to the gate for maintenance engineers to inspect. They explored various solutions with the technicians to lower the ram air temperature probe's reading, even considering methods like using dry ice. Inside the cockpit, it was bustling with activity. Crew, technicians, the purser, and another Spanair captain all coming and going. The captain acknowledged the significant delay, emphasizing the need to document everything that transpired. Pressure mounted to expedite the return to the runway, exacerbated by rising cabin temperatures in the 30°C heat outside. Passengers and crew alike grew restless, eager for departure. The maintenance engineers devoted over an hour to troubleshooting the faulty sensor, exhausting various attempts to rectify the issue. Ultimately, they advised the crew to resolve the matter by pulling the circuit breaker to disconnect the electrical supply to the ram air temperature probe heater. With the captain's approval, the crew commenced preparations for departure. Meanwhile, a Spanair flight attendant seated in the jump seat behind the pilots engaged in discussion with the first officer about the ongoing sensor issue. Simultaneously, ground operations continued as the aircraft underwent refueling procedures. By just after 2 p.m., the captain exited the aircraft to personally oversee the refueling process, ensuring its swift completion. Having returned to the gate and shut down the engines, the pilots had to initiate procedures anew, treating it like the start of a fresh flight. This included contacting air traffic control to request clearance for their flight to Las Palmas. However, an initial miscommunication occurred when the first officer inadvertently called the wrong controller, likely influenced by the heightened sense of urgency within the cockpit. Such instances highlight the critical necessity for pilots to meticulously adhere to established procedures, particularly when navigating unforeseen challenges. Further evidence from the cockpit voice recorder indicates that the captain was feeling pressured by time constraints. During the before-start checklist, the captain frequently anticipated the first officer's prompts, often answering before the items were fully read aloud. Additionally, prior to taxiing, the captain took the initiative to contact air traffic control personally to inquire about any potential delays, a task typically assigned to the first officer. Once the engines were started, the crew proceeded with the after-start checklist, systematically going through 8 items. However, when they reached the final item concerning the flaps and slats, the captain interrupted the first officer before he could complete the reading, instructing him instead to request taxi clearance from air traffic control. Unfortunately, this led to the omission of the final checklist item. While an oversight, it was one of several missed opportunities the pilots had to ensure the correct configuration of the aircraft's flaps before takeoff. These instances underscore the critical importance of procedural adherence, especially during moments of heightened operational pressure. As the pilots taxied towards the runway, They followed the taxi checklist, which included checking the indicated light for the automatic reserve thrust system. This light should normally be on to indicate that extra thrust is available in case an engine fails during takeoff. However, because the slats were not configured for takeoff, this important light remained off, a detail that the pilots overlooked. On the same checklist, there was another opportunity for the pilots to verify the flaps for takeoff. The final item, the takeoff briefing, was intended for reviewing speeds, thrust settings, and flap configurations, among other critical details. Unfortunately, the cockpit voice recorder revealed that this briefing was omitted. During the taxi to the runway, the pilots engaged in conversation with a flight attendant seated in the jump seat, although most of the discussion was not related to the flight itself. Adding to the confusion for investigators, just as the aircraft was aligning with the runway, the first officer performed a final check known as the Takeoff Imminent Checklist. Despite verbally confirming to have checked and set the positions of the center of gravity, flap wheel, and the flaps and slats indicator on the LCD screen, he failed to notice that the flaps and slats were actually in the 0 positions, according to the cockpit voice recorder. Despite the challenging environment inside the aircraft and the distractions in the cockpit, the pilots would never have attempted to take off without ensuring that the flaps and slats were properly set. To understand why this happened, it's crucial to know how the aircraft notifies pilots if the flaps are not configured correctly before takeoff. The MD-80 is equipped with a takeoff warning system that emits a loud horn in the cockpit if the flaps are not set. Pilots have long relied on this system, assuming that if the horn doesn't sound, the flaps are correctly positioned. Interestingly, this warning system shares its power source with the heater for the RAM air temperature probe. When the crew pulled the circuit breaker for the probe's heater, they unknowingly cut power to both the warning system and the horn, effectively disabling them. As the aircraft lined up on the runway and the pilots initiated the takeoff, they advanced the throttles. The plane lifted off momentarily, but struggled to gain altitude. Without the lift generated by the flaps and slats, the wings couldn't provide enough lift. Although the aircraft managed a brief climb, the pilots neglected to retract the landing gear. Normally, the takeoff warning horn would have alerted them to this oversight, but with the circuit breaker pulled, no warning was issued. Within moments, the MD-82 began its deadly descent. It grazed the runway lights and crashed just beyond the airport's perimeter. The devastating crash claimed the lives of 154 passengers and 6 crew members, marking Spain's deadliest air disaster in almost 30 years. The investigation painfully revealed how pivotal moments and decisions could have altered the outcome. If the captain hadn't alerted the controller, if the checklist had been meticulously followed, if the circuit breaker hadn't been pulled, or if the critical warning horn had sounded, the tragedy might have been averted. The crash of Spanair Flight 5022 was the result of a combination of technical malfunctions, flawed decision-making under pressure, incomplete checklist procedures, and lapses in crew coordination. Responsibility lies with both technical issues and human errors, where critical decisions and actions could have altered the tragic outcome. Spanair Flight 5022's crash echoes as a haunting testament to missed opportunities and the profound consequences of seemingly small decisions, forever changing the course of aviation safety protocols. If you like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more such tragic and intriguing real-life stories.